And now back to our special report we're calling Drug Nation. The idea of legalizing marijuana to try to reduce crime is a hot topic right now in America, and there's no shortage of opinions out there. In fact, here's what some of you are saying who called into our AM Fix hotline.
I smoke marijuana on a occasional basis, and it's a lot safer than alcohol. And I was wondering why it hasn't been legalized yet, and I think it could be a big boost to our economy and possibly save our economy.
I, as well as other cancer patients, sometimes have to use a drug called Marinol, which is artificial marijuana, the THC. It costs the taxpayers, in this case, $1,800 every month for 60 tablets, as opposed to, I can't imagine how much marijuana I would get for that price.
All right, well, joining us now from Texas is former presidential candidate and Congressman Dr. Ron Paul. Thanks for joining us this morning, Congressman. Now, I know you have some strong ideas about how this country is conducting its war on drugs. We just heard from some of our viewers who strongly support legalizing marijuana. Do you think we should legalize pot alone or all drugs, including heroin, cocaine, and meth?
Well, I think we should look at the federal drug war, and I would say the federal drug war has failed, so we should reject it. When I talk about changing the law, I want to go back to the constitutional approach to a problem like this, and that is through the states. Up until 1937, there wasn't even a law against marijuana, and at that time, they just passed a law to tax it. So we've had an experience in this country where we didn't have all these laws, but it was regulated by the states. Alcohol is legalized by the federal government, but it's regulated, by state laws. So I'm thinking more of an approach like that. But what upsets me so much is when the state tries to exert its authority over marijuana, like in California, they'll pass a law and say that sick people can use it. So people who are dying with AIDS or cancer are getting benefit from marijuana. Then the federal government comes in and says, we don't care about the state law. And they just override and they put people into prison for this. We have now over 500,000 people in prison that never committed a violent crime for drug use. And there are mandatory jail sentences under these conditions. This makes no sense. It's so expensive and it hasn't achieved anything.
So let me just get your position on this, though. You think the federal government should just stay out of trying to legalize all drugs, and that's not just marijuana, but all drugs?
Right, and I would let the states deal with it. It would be a state issue on how they do it. I recall as a youngster when I worked in a drugstore, I sold codeine and cough medicine over the counter. I could buy it as a teenager, and it wasn't a drug problem. So it isn't the lack of laws that causes the drug problem. I mean, the real drug problem and disaster in this country is alcohol and nicotine. That's what's killing people. So we're dealing with the minutia, but we're creating a monstrous legal problem costing hundreds of billions of dollars and putting people in prison that should be treated as sick people. They shouldn't be treated as criminals. We treat alcoholics. What if we put all our alcoholics in prison? I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. Prohibition of alcohol was the biggest absurdity, social absurdity, and it committed a lot of crime. Back then, it was the borders between the United States and Canada. That's where the alcohol was coming in, from Canada back during Prohibition. Now it's Mexico. But the problems we have is because the price of these drugs is about 1,000 times greater than it would be. Actually, some of this stuff is useless if it's just allowed to be out in the open. So we've created most of the problems for ourselves, and these drug wars are a consequence of our policies.
All right, well, let me just ask you this, because there are people that see your point of view. In fact, a lot of them do, but there are people that vehemently disagree. They believe that if we legalize drugs, especially hard drugs, that we're just going to see more addicts and we're going to see more pain. In fact, I talked to a former DEA special agent, Robert Stutman, on our show on Monday, and he says that if you think that legalization is the right way to go, it's naive. Let's listen to his point.
Well,
You legalize, you will at least double, some studies say 5 to 10 times as much. You give drugs to kids, they'll use them, period. Anybody that thinks that's not true has never met a kid or a drug addict.
Congressman, what about the position that we'll just be creating more addicts by making it easier for kids to get?
Well, I would compare the statistics of how many people were using marijuana before 1937 and what kind of problems we've had. After it was made illegal and we created the drug war, we've had a massive increase of use of these drugs. So I think that very statistic refutes everything that he says. And if you're looking for this so-called gateway drug, the most addicting drug, it is claimed by many scientists, it's nicotine. That's more addictive than marijuana, and it kills more people. So we're on the wrong track, and we could do so much better by just coming to common sense, putting the responsibility on the individual and the family and the local community and our state governments, instead of creating this monstrous drug war, which has only been going on since Nixon's time in the early 1970s. But literally hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent, and it keeps getting worse. But there's a lot of law enforcement officials and a lot of judges that would like to see these rules changed.
Okay, but Congressman, are you planning on introducing any legislation about legalizing drugs or leaving it in the hands of the state? I know you have an industrial hemp farming act that you're trying to get through with Barney Frank, but what about putting forth legislation to legalize drugs?
Yeah, I have in the past. I'm not absolutely sure. I don't think I have done it this term. I did the one with industrial hemp, which is one of the consequences of this crazy war. You can't even grow industrial hemp. It has nothing to do with smoking marijuana, and that would really create jobs in a lot of industry. No, but in the past I have to change the code on marijuana so it would be not prohibited by the federal government, and the states would deal with it.
All right, so you're talking about marijuana in that instance. Okay. Well, thank you for your point of view. I know, as I said, there's a lot of people that agree with you and have been weighing in on our website this morning. Congressman Ron Paul, always great to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.